Right, well, hello everybody and welcome to a rather different video. As you know, I am a fan of the Italian army, if you know anything about the channel. I've done several battle reports for using Flames of War, which I think is a fantastic game system. Not exactly 100% accurate, but very, very good game system. A war game with the emphasis very much on the game, but the war bit is there. It's not totally inaccurate, it gives good results. So what I thought I'd do today is show you my entire Italian army collection, because I never use all of it in any game. It's quite substantial, as you may. I've got it all under here. There's 7 boxes, and that sounds like a lot, but I've built it up over several years. It's taken a lot of time to do it because I don't think you really can't put so much time and money into a hobby. It's just really, frankly, wrong. Anyway, so I'm going to go through each of it and we'll see what we can see. So start off, box number 1, and what we have inside here, if I open it up, is infantry.
Lots and lots and lots of infantry. These are based for Eastern European operations. This is an Italian Eastern Front army. Yes, I have no fear. And they tend to use a lot of foot soldiers, so you need a lot of figures. There's about 75 bases worth here, I guess, including the smaller command teams. They're mostly by Peter Pig. There's a few Battlefront figures in here, but they're mostly Peter Pig, firm based in Dorset. I make my own bases out of plastic card. I don't tend to use the Battlefront ones. It gives me more variety in positioning the figures on the bases. Because an Italian Eastern Front army tends to have a lot of infantry, they do have to be marked as well. They'll put little colours on them so we can determine which is in which platoon.
Box number 2, and what we have inside here is
heavy weapons. So artillery, 100mm howitzers, and 75mm howitzers, which are not in the version 4 yet, but soon will be. And things like heavy machine guns, mortars, 47mm anti-tank guns. They've also got anti-aircraft guns, anti-tank guns, all the basic heavy equipment. These figures are more likely to be Battlefront. There are some Peter Pig amongst this, but they're mostly Battlefront. We've also got, down here, we've got obsolete items like the staff teams that they used to have in version 3. Obviously I haven't got around to getting rid of them yet. There's the anti-aircraft guns. I use these, I've got mounted on trucks but also mounted on the ground, and you just take the actual gun off and put it onto the stand as you need it. I've got a few 88mm. The Italians, or 90mm 53s, they're basically the same kind of thing. I don't know where I got this model from. I bought it online, so it's not my model, but very handy, but only ever really used in North Africa, more's the pity, but I use it just for completeness. We've also got some sniper teams which were used in the version 3, aren't used in version 4, but obviously I've still got the teams, the squads there. And I've even got a few Solothurn anti-tank rifles, which are really used for the early war engagements if we ever get to have to do them. They're not very good Solothurn anti-tank rifles, but you have with the Italian army, there's not exactly a surfeit of anti-tank weapons, so you need everything you can get.
Okay, box number 3, and what we have inside here is more specialist troops. We've got cavalry, we have Alpini, more guns,
and Cossacks, which were used extensively in version 3. We've got the mounted and the dismounted version here. Cavalry is used for Italian mechanised forces, organic motorbikes as I like to call them. The actual models themselves are Battlefront Romanian cavalry, which have been modified. The heads have been removed, replaced with Italian heads, which you can buy separately from Peter Pig, and painted up as Italians. They look just as good. We've also got some Alpini. Alpini are again modified. There are standard Peter Pig figures with the Alpini heads. We've also got standard ones with little black cockerel feathers things added on that they used. Oh, sorry, it's not cockerel feathers. It's a kind of a feather they use for the Alpini. Alpini are very good. They are probably as good as Bersaglieri. They've got much better equipment, I think, but aren't in the game at the moment. We've finally got some additions for late war period, when the Italians became the RSI. They started getting their troops trained by the Germans in German methods, and so you've got teams you've got these kind of formations which use Panzerfaust and Panzerschrecks. So these are added on for the late war additions. We've also got some 65mm mountain guns. Very nice little things, but very short range, which cuts against them really. But very nice little additions to have as artillery and as make-do anti-tank guns. Box number 4 is vehicles and tanks. Now, it took me some time to muster a great deal of tanks because being an Eastern European army, the Italians didn't really have very many of them. So we've got all manner of vehicles in here. The iconic one is, of course, the M1340 tank, which is the predominant Italian medium tank of the Second World War. The ones I use, 3D printed ones from Butler's. I can't remember if they're actually M1340s or M1441s. The difference between them is very, very minor. You have to be a bit of an expert to find them. Then we also have some old L6s. Now, these were actually used on the Eastern Front, so we needed them. Again, they're by Butler's. And as you see there, they are desert camouflage with slaps of mud on them to camouflage them. And I think they've come up quite well. I've also got some more anti-aircraft guns on trucks. I've already got plenty of these, but I just love these models so much that I couldn't resist getting a few more of them. They're very large, but they just look cool to me. We've also got a few French Renault tanks. They're only really used on Sicily. If you want to do Operation Husky, and who wouldn't, then you need a few of these things. They're not very good, but they're very cheap and they're very dinky, and they are armoured vehicles. The first ever armoured vehicle I got for the Italians was the Semiventi 47s. These things, again, are really basically mobile 47mm anti-tank guns, but for what they are, they're very handy indeed. These particular ones are, again, I think these are Butler's. They may actually not be. I'm not sure about these now. I've had several different types over the years. Artillery tractors used to tow your guns around. I found that in Flames of War, people tend not to use artillery tractors very much, but I think they're quite handy, especially with the Italians. You rely very much on these artillery pieces for your main anti-tank assets, and they get zeroed in by artillery. It's a good idea to be able to move them out quickly. These are the M1139s, the first real Italian so-called medium tank. I think these things look really dinky. They're only really used in the early war period, and they're basically like cut-down Grant tanks. They're not as fast, they're not as big, they're not as well armoured. They've got a 37mm gun rather than 75 in the hull, and only machine guns instead of a 37mm. But I think they look really effective, even though they're terrible tanks in actual performance. I use them quite a bit. And we're on to box number 5, which is, quick opening, more tanks and vehicles of the smaller kind of variety here, armoured cars and tankettes mostly. The AB-41 is the Italian Army scout asset, and they're as good as anything that anybody else has got. Moderately priced, reasonably well armed and armoured. Good. I've got enough actually for an entire company of them, which you can actually deploy. The Semiventi 75 is probably the premier Italian tank in the war. It's probably about the best you can get for the Italians. It's basically a modified M1441 with a 75mm infantry gun stuck in the front of it. And then I've got these things here. These are Semiventi 105s. Now, these are Italian tanks, but only ever actually used by the Germans. The Germans took over them when they occupied Italy and manufactured quite a few and equipped some of their infantry divisions with them. I don't know what the models are here. They are metal rather than resin, so I don't know whether, again, I've purchased these. They're one of the only 2 units I've got that are not Italian, because they're actually officially German. Finally, we've got the little tankettes. These, again, are all Butler's. I've never used them in game yet, but I've got a fair number of them. I've got them painted for both desert operations and also Eastern Front operations. They're used for both. They've got the best little twin machine guns. So I've got some with the Solitaire anti-tank rifles. I'm not sure I've got any with Brixian mortars, and for some reason I don't have any CV-33 flamethrowers. Okay, box number 6, and what we have inside here is assorted support equipment. Minefields, barbed wire, markers, death smoke, and Italian type cards. Now, the barbed wire is really a holdover from version 3 because it was all linear now and now it's all circular, so it's quite redundant, which is a bit of a pity because the minefields, I put a lot of effort into them, and these little signs on saying attenzione, minefield, you know. I use a lot of dead markers. I think they're quite handy for, well, just for the aesthetic sight of it all, although it is actually quite morale shattering when you see how many there are after a typical battle. Then I make my own markers. I don't use the ones that Battlefront provide. These are just made out of little bits of plastic card with colours, red, white and green on them, and the markers dug in, gone to ground, pinned. And we've got these little Italian flags here, which are actually cloth soaked in glue, which didn't really work out very well. And this runs to this as well. We've also got these little Italian runouts, which mark as bailed out tanks while reorganising. And also these are just for marking in artillery bombardments. You tend to have a lot of artillery in Italian armies, so quite handy. I'm a great believer in making objective markers something quite interesting. So here we've got an ice cream van, which will be quite useful in the desert. And here this little scene here with the ladies swimming. I mean, if you try and tell me that that's not something that British and Italian troops wouldn't fight over, I don't believe you. Generally, I'm a great believer in making objective markers a bit different, and we've got a good section here. We've got Gina Lollobrigida by the Colosseum, an anti-American one there, when the fact they're getting bombed, anti-Russian one, Sophie Loren underwear, always popular. That one there is it's basically a propaganda poster advertising revenge for loss of Somaliland. Revenge, or I don't know what the Italian is called. We've got the Italian fascist lady kissing the flag, the Italian Empire, the man himself, Mussolini, Italian fascist emblem, another publicity provoker, Captain Corelli in his mandolin, good if you're fighting German armies, scene from The Godfather for Americans, collage of Mussolini again, Italian flag, and the fourth white meat pizza. Just a bit of variation on it all. And finally, box number 7, which I didn't bother opening because it's very boring. Box number 7 just contains odds and bits and pieces, particularly these. These are the modifications for the Italians in late war when they joined the RSI, and they've got the German Panzerfaust and Panzerschrecks. What we've got here as well is my ready-made smoke. This is an old Charles Grant method. You basically just paint these things up. They've got little slots on the top and the bottom. You assemble them together like that and then put them over whatever it is that you're blowing up. Simple, effective, and most important of all, it's cheap. And then finally, aircraft. Yes, well, I use some CR-42s. These are the standard ones from Battlefront. I've modified them so the propeller's been replaced by that disc of perspex there, giving the impression it's still going along. People say that they're really delicate, but I can't say I've ever had any problems with them. I do have a Machi 202. This is made by a Japanese firm called Sweet. I didn't paint this one up. Somebody else painted this one up for me. Somebody's a bit better painter than me. They're fighters, but they used as fighter bombers on the Eastern Front because they were basically rubbish as fighters. So it enables me to use them, an all-Italian build. But I do actually have a Stuka. I don't know where this one came from. I bought it at Bring and Buy scale. It does the job. It's functional. I'm not a very good modeler, so it doesn't look very good. But that is basically the entire Italian army.